Ohio State must play to their standard regardless of the opponent.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Buckeye fans, to your Feel Good Friday edition of Locked On Buckeyes, which is your daily Ohio State podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, veteran sports talk host, delivering passionate coverage about your Buckeyes. And today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward, Mazda, Move and Be Moved. During today's show, I will unveil my score prediction as well as discuss how I think tomorrow's game is going to go, as well as a few players and position groups I'm going to watch very closely tomorrow night. But first, it is very easy for any athlete to know they're going into a game against a lesser opponent and to let their guard down and to play down to their opponent's level. We see it in college. We even see it at the professional level where you may be the number one team in your league or in your division, but then you see the worst team in your league or division and you think, man, we can take this playoff. We can't let off the gas. And that's not how Ryan Day preaches. And I don't think you would appreciate Ohio State going into the shoe tomorrow night and laying an egg. Even if it's a win, the Buckeyes could play down to the standard, and you would have some questions about Ohio State's mindset and mentality going into the off week. The good thing about Ryan Day, especially this year, he is preaching and pushing for a level of nasty that is great. You want to see that from a football team, but also he is pushing them to keep their foot on the gas, to not look out there across the field, see a lesser opponent, and to play down to their level. No, you always, at Ohio State, should always play up to the standard that has been set for decades to be a Buckeye. It's not like any other school in the country. Now, I know there might be a school or two in the South or maybe out West that might say our standard is the same as Ohio State's or it's higher. And I can guarantee you, it is not. Ohio State's standard is high, higher than any other school in the country, which is why tomorrow, when Ohio State goes into their game with the Ohio Bobcats, Ohio State must play to their standard. You saw a week ago when Grambling came in, an FCS school that is nowhere close to being a top-tier FCS school. Ohio State didn't treat them like they were a team that won back-to-back FCS national championships. No. What do? They treated them with respect, but also they played to the Ohio State standard. Execution was high. The defense played fast and free. The Silver Bullets were moving all around the field. And what are you going to find tomorrow night? Or what you should find is the same style of play, is the same mentality. No matter if it's Sonny Styles or Arval Reese or Carson Hinzman or Julian Sayin or fill-in-the-blank player that's in the rotation for Ohio State. They should all play to the same standard, which is Ohio State standard. Don't lower that then because the Bobcats are coming to town, a team Ohio State hasn't played since 2010. If you need some extra motivation, last time the Bobcats came to town, the Bobcat mascot attacked Brutus. If that's any motivation that you need, go ahead, tap into that. But that shouldn't be your motivation, the thing you need to fuel yourself tomorrow night. No, your motivation should be, we got to get better. And as Ryan Day is going to put more on Julian Sayin's plate, he put more on his plate a week ago. We saw how Julian Sayin responded to that. If you go back to week one, his plate wasn't full. You may say his plate against Texas was about a quarter full. There was a lot more room on his plate where Ryan Day could fill that thing up. But Ryan Day said we didn't want to put too much on his plate. We didn't want to go into that game with an extensive game plan and overload him during his first start. No. And even though his numbers aren't sexy, what do we say here on the show, which showed up on the film? That Sayin executed in the way that he should have executed. There were 3 drops. He could have gone from 13 of 20 to 16 of 20. Against that defense, that's a really good day. Against any defense, that's a good day. He followed it up, 18 of 19. The one incompletion was a turnover. It was an interception, and that was it. Outside of that, homie was lighting it up. And I think tomorrow against Ohio, he's going to line it up again. And I know the Bobcat secondary has some issues. That was one thing when I went back and rewatched some of the game. It was the fact that the Bobcat secondary against Rutgers. Now, it did tighten up a little bit against West Virginia, but West Virginia, I don't think it's going to be in the upper half of the Big 12, so take that for what it's worth. I do think for the Bobcat defense, it did get better last week, but they haven't seen anything like Ohio State. And I know yesterday our guest, Charlie Fidel, the sports editor of the Post, said that the Bobcats are going to score 14 points. That's his opinion. That's what he believes. And I understand why he believes that. But you're going to find later on in this show, when I unveil my score prediction, why I don't agree that the Bobcats are even going to have double-digit points in this game, because it's not about Ohio. This game is about the Ohio State University. And I think for tomorrow's game, this defense is going to be so much fun to watch, man. So much fun to watch. You have a defensive coordinator that doesn't really understand. And I haven't got this sense from Matt Patricia, but if I were to talk to a guy that's been in the NFL for as long as he has, and then to look at him and say, what are your thoughts about playing Grambling? What are your thoughts about playing Ohio? What was your thoughts previously about playing Texas? And if you were to give us the true answer, maybe something like, Texas makes sense. Texas is in a power conference. They are one of the better teams in the country. Ohio State just knocked them out of the CFP last year. So playing Texas week 1, that makes sense. I mean, in the NFL, you're going to play a team that won their division or maybe played the playoffs the year before in your season opener. So that makes sense. But Grambling doesn't make any sense. While Ohio is better than Grambling, playing the Bobcats, it's like, why are we not playing somebody at our level? There are power conference teams and Notre Dame. And then there's a group level of conference teams. Why go down a little bit? It doesn't make sense. Now, this is not something that I've had a conversation with Matt Patricia about. This is just my mind. I think about how confusing college football is at times. And then when I think about a guy that's been in the NFL for 22, 23 years, yeah, it'd be a little confusing. But in a game like this, knowing that Ohio State is going to have an off week next week, I think Matt Patricia is going to put more on this defense's plate. There will be some confusing coverages. There will be some different twists and stunts and simulated pressures. Why? Because that's what you're going to see from Matt Patricia every single week. He even did it last week. He's going to do it again this week. And then after the off week over in Seattle, he's going to do it there too. So I do think for this week, Patricia, he's not going to show everything, but he's going to show more. He's going to put more on their plate. But on defense, a lot of it's read and reacting. Now, you have to know your coverages, your reads, what you're eyeing, what your keys are. Those things are still important. But defense is defense. And I think for the Buckeyes tomorrow, they know what Parker Navarro can do. They know what Sia Bangera can do. They know what the receivers can do. But they shouldn't be able to get any traction on Ohio State's defense tomorrow. Not only is it a night game in the shoe, not only is it a special theme with the stripe out, it's Ohio State's defense. Keanu Jackson Jr. hasn't played to the standard that any people thought he was going to play up to this year. Now, is it another Zach Harrison situation where Zach Harrison, to some people, never met their own standard because of the hype that he had coming out of high school? I don't think so. But I do think a lot of people had a lot of hype and put a lot of pressure on Keanu Jackson Jr. He got knocked out of the game against Texas, came back last week, played about a half of football. I think tomorrow, after having basically a full game was worth against a cupcake under his belt, I think Keanu Jackson Jr. is going to play like a madman tomorrow night. Speaking of him playing like a madman, there are certain players and position groups that I want to see play mad and free and nasty tomorrow night. I'll unveil that list next. This episode is brought to you by Mazda, moving the game forward for those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. This week moment that moved the game forward is what Bo Jackson did a week ago, and that is a performance that he could build upon where he got his first touches as an Ohio State Buckeye. Went over 100 yards rushing, had his first touchdown scored a week ago as well, and that type of performance can propel him to play big tomorrow as well. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Thank y'all for tapping Locked on Buckeyes and making this show your first listen of the day. Ohio State is in a great position right now. They're the number one team in the country. They have all the talent they need for this year to be a special season, and they're coming off of a pretty good performance. Pretty good, maybe putting it lightly. If you put up a 70 burger against anybody in college football, that's a really good day. And then if you put up a 70 burger and hold the opposition to 0, you get a goose egg for them. That's a really good day. Now, Ohio State knows what they did last week, but they're trying to replicate that performance once again today. But tomorrow's game is not just about Ohio. It's about Ohio State taking another step forward, and it's about Ohio State getting better in some areas that they haven't been the strongest in. And the first position group with some players I'm looking at is the running backs, because to me, on offense, that is the only area that has been questionable. It's not one that I don't think is going to be this way the entire season, but through 2 games, yeah, it got better last week, but a lot of that was in mop-up duty where your 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, whatever running backs came onto the field, and they did a lot of damage on the field. Week 1 against Texas, the Buckeyes only had 66 rushing yards. The main 2 backs that game were James Peoples and C.J. Donaldson. While I don't know the total of those 2 guys a week ago, I know it looked better, but there's still room for improvement. So for me, the one position group, or the first position group I am looking forward to watching tomorrow is the running back position. It's not because they are a strength. It's a questionable unit because the production that they have currently put out there is not up to the standard of what we expect from an Ohio State running back. Because Ohio State right now is wide receiver U in college football. That's not debatable. You can try. Look what Ohio State has done in college football, and then look what they're currently doing, former Buckeyes, that is, are doing in the NFL. If you want to try to debate that Ohio State is not wide receiver U, I would like to look at it and say, well, who are we looking at? The past 5 years, past 10 years? You can go back to the 80s, the 70s, and look at Ohio State players and say, oh, wide receiver U is for real. But then if you just want to look at now, the past 5 years, maybe past 10 years, you look back a little bit. Terry McLaurin, dog. Chris Olave, dog. Garrett Wilson, dog. Njigba, dog. Mecca Buka literally called his game-winning touchdown a week ago during his first game during his rookie year. Dog. You're going to have a hard time proving to me that your school is wide receiver U when we watch it every single weekend in college football, and now we're seeing it in the NFL, that Ohio State's wide receivers are meant to lead and are dogs. Not just in college, they're dogs in the NFL too. I don't know where that came from, but it felt pretty good to get that off my chest. It's also going to be pretty good when we see Donaldson and Peoples put it together, down after down after down. Because to me, if you want to win a national championship, you got to have a running game. You got to have a solid running game. I am not saying you got to have an Eddie George or an Ezekiel Elliott or fill in the blank Ohio State Maurice Clarett when he was. I'm not saying that. If it's a year ago, I'm not saying you have to have a Henderson or a Judkins to win a national championship. No. You have to have a solid running game. And so far, these 2 guys are figuring it out a little bit. Donaldson is lighter than he's ever been in college, that is, playing running back. So that's a different thing when you're working with a lighter body. You have to figure out, well, move a little bit freer, and this moves are happening a little bit quicker than normal. So that is something that's going to be a big change for him. But I think he's finally figuring it out. Putting his foot in the ground and going is his best way to move the ball forward. For Peoples, he didn't get extended playing time last year. It's his first time, first 2 games. So I think tomorrow when the Ohio Bobcats come in, test him. Maybe not test him early, but test him. Not Ohio. I mean, Ryan Day and Brian Hartline. Test him. See what he's made of. Because I believe this kind of game is something that you can test him in. Now, here's my thought about the running back room. I am always up in the air about a 3-back rotation because at some point you are limiting touches for your best running back in the room. But with the way Bo Jackson played last week, while it was against the backups of Grambling, I firmly believe that if he backs that performance up this weekend against Ohio with another solid performance, and let's say he plays in the first half or maybe even the first quarter, and you go Peoples or Donaldson first drive, and whichever one doesn't go the first drive, they go the second drive. And let's say the third drive, they put Bo Jackson in, and Bo Jackson continues to get better, continues to show that he is going to be an all-around running back. He takes care of the ball. He doesn't fumble it near the goal line like he did a week ago. Let's say he takes those steps forward that he needs to. I would not be shocked if after the off week, we go back and look at Ohio State's next game and say, oh, it's on the road, it's at Washington, it's in a hostile environment, and Ohio State's using 3 running backs, and they're all getting about the same amount of carries? Why is that? Because I think Bo Jackson's going to be that kind of dude. I'm not saying he's going to be better than James Peoples or Donaldson this year. I think Bo Jackson may have the highest ceiling of any running back in Ohio State's running back room right now, which is going to go into why I think tomorrow, while I'm watching the running back room, mainly the top 2 guys tomorrow, I think Bo Jackson is that player that everybody needs to watch very, very closely. But we also need to watch very closely. Another unit we need to watch very closely is the defensive line. I'm not really worried about the interior of the D-line like I was previously in the offseason because I think Kayden McDonald, Eddric Houston, Will Smith Jr., Tyrone Malone, Jarquez Carter, I think they're figuring it out. I think those guys that were at one point a liability and one point were a unit that had a lot of question marks around it, I think they're figuring it out. And you can learn that and figure it out during practice. And so I'm not really worried about those guys like I was about a month ago. The one thing that I'm not going to say that I'm worried about, but there might be cause for concern if you get into 2 games of Big Ten play and the Buckeyes are struggling to get pressure on the quarterback. That's where there'll be cause for concern. Because one thing that worked for Ohio State last year was they found different ways to get consistent pressure on the quarterback. Now, when I say pressure on the quarterback, I'm not just looking at the defensive line, but for this conversation, I am. The conversation specifically. Now, in a game, you can get pressure from bringing defensive backs from all different angles, bringing linebackers from all different angles. So those things are reality. Reality is also that Ohio State's defensive ends are not consistently getting pressure on the quarterback. Actually, pretty sad, honestly. I think last week Ohio State had 2 sacks. One was by, was it Riley Pettijohn? One sack was by Kayden Curry, and I had this written down. I saw it on the screen a couple days ago. I forget who the other sack was by, but I know it wasn't by Kenyatta Jackson Jr. It wasn't by Bo Atkinson. It could have been Logan George. He didn't play last week. He's expected to play tomorrow. And I wonder if he's going to be one of the guys that actually pushes the Buckeyes edge rushers to be true edge rushers. Not just setting the edge or keeping things inside, but also setting the edge, keeping things inside, but getting that constant pressure on the quarterback. We all remember, and if you don't, I'll try to paint a picture for you, of when C.J. Hicks got pressure on Arch Manning on Texas's last play in the season opener. Hicks lines up on Ohio State's left on the defensive line. He is one-on-one with the tackle. Made quick light work of him. Got to Arch Manning. Arch found a way to get the ball thrown to the tight end. Caleb Downs tackled the tight end and used great technique to make sure the tight end could not slip the tackle. Game over. He gets down. He's a couple yards away from the first down marker. Ohio State wins. And that play right there was one that I think has literally been 4 years in the making. Because I think it was something that should have happened last year. And I don't know if it was the coaches or if it was Hicks. Because one thing I noticed this year is that when people were upset with Larry Johnson last year with the way the D-line was producing and the way the pressure was coming and they were disgruntled with him, I don't think Larry Johnson was a problem. I'll say that again. I don't think Larry Johnson was a problem. And I'll leave it at that. You can fill in the blanks as you want to. I think for me, tomorrow, I am closely watching the running backs, Bo Jackson specifically in that room, one player, but the top 2 guys collectively, individually, Bo Jackson. And then on defense, I'm watching the edge rushers, but also finding ways for that side of the ball to get pressure on the quarterback. Get sacks. You're playing a MAC school. There is no reason why Ohio State should have less than 5 sacks tomorrow. Does that number seem high? Maybe to you, but it shouldn't be. Because you're playing a MAC school, and you have Ohio State athletes on the edge. Show off what you got. Show off why you're at Ohio State. Pursue the quarterback and take him down. Speaking of taking him down, well, I did put down on paper my final score prediction for Ohio State's game between the Bobcats and the Buckeyes, and I have a good feeling you're going to like the numbers that are on my notebook. This episode is brought to you by DoorDash. It's almost the weekend. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For Ohio State, Julian Sayin has delivered in a big way this year. In his first 2 games of the Ohio State's QB1, he has shown poise, he has shown consistency, he has shown the accuracy that Ryan Day needs from the starting quarterback for the Buckeyes. When the pressure was on for Julian Sayin, he came through. No hesitation, no delay. And if you've been watching week after week, this performance wasn't a fluke. Julian Sayin is on a streak. And just like Julian Sayin delivered for Ohio State, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays with DoorDash Streaks. You save every Saturday you order, stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day. Only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th. Thank you all for tapping in Locked On Buckeyes and making this show your first listen of the day. We got one quick reminder for you. Tomorrow after the Buckeyes game against the Bobcats, it will be a live post-game show. Locked On Buckeyes Live will be back and better than ever tomorrow night. Right as soon as the game is over, I'm hitting live on my computer, and we're going to talk for the normal show length about what we just watched. That's a live show that's only on the YouTube. So make sure you go to YouTube, subscribe to Locked On Buckeyes, hit that notification bell so you get notified every time a new show goes live. There will also be a Sunday morning show for you. So we're not only going to do Locked On Buckeyes live at the conclusion of tomorrow night's game, there will also be a Sunday morning pod kind of diving deeper into the notebook that we're going to put together about Ohio State's game against Ohio. I don't know why I lost my train of thought right there. That is not something that happens very easily, especially when I know that on my notebook will be a notebook full of notes from the game. And sometimes it's extensive drive by drive. Sometimes it's play by play. It's really depends on the feel of the day. The feel of the day right now for Ohio State's game tomorrow is a massive Ohio State win. It is a game that Ohio State should have no trouble. Well, I won't say no trouble with. Ohio is a respectable team. They won the MAC last year. They are a team that is replacing, similar to Ohio State, 8 starters from last year's team. And so those guys are going to be that's going to be a team that the Buckeyes are going to have to come out ready to play and set the tone early. And as they set the tone, I think what happened last week will happen again this week. Touchdown, 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 touchdown. I mean, drive after drive, not just points, but touchdowns. And I do think the Buckeyes have more than enough firepower and everything it takes to go out there and to tame the Bobcats. I could have said bulldoze. I would have loved the alliteration, but taming an animal that is a bobcat seemed a whole lot better for the show than bulldoze the Bobcats, because you do want them to bulldoze them and run them over and make them out of the stadium, realizing they just got blasted. But blasted Bobcats, all that alliteration works, but tame the Bobcats is the theme of the day. And the current line via our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook, make every moment more, is Ohio State minus 30.5. The line did open at Ohio State minus 34.5, and maybe that's more respect for Ohio. I get it. Maybe it's more the money is coming in a way they're trying to lower that line just a little bit. The over-under is currently set at 50.5. This is via the time of the recording on Thursday evening. So maybe when you listen to this or as we get closer to kickoff, that line might dip. The over-under might dip to being 49.5 or 49 flat, or maybe even 29.5 for the Ohio State minus number, as far as the Buckeyes are favored to win by this number. So I have Ohio State winning this game. I'm just talking and talking. Ohio State's winning this game 52-6. I have the Buckeyes winning this game 52-6. The way Ohio State's defense has played so far this year has been lights out. And there's no reason to think that Ohio State's defense will not play lights out tomorrow night. They have the firepower up front on the defensive line to do so. They have linebackers, and maybe have 4 linebackers that can play consistently. They have a secondary that is one of the best in the country. And not only is Caleb Downs there, I believe Lorenzo Styles Jr. being the Jordan Hancock replacement allows Caleb Downs to be the Swiss Army knife that he is. And if you think they're going to allow Parker Navarro and Sia Bengera and all the other weapons that Ohio has, or tight ends, one of those really good guys as well, knowing that there's a Buckeye, there used to be a Bobcat at Wilcats Merrick, you think they're going to let them come in and gain some confidence? No. They're going to shut that down real quick. And I don't see a scenario. Now, I know it's possible, but in my mind, the way I think this game is going to go, I don't see a scenario that the Ohio Bobcats gain a lot of traction or even score a touchdown. The 6 is a field goal. I think they get 1 field goal in the first half, 1 field goal in the second half, and that is it. The second half field goal is against the backups at Ohio State. The first half field goal, maybe latter part of the first quarter, but that's it. This team is playing in a way that they are not going to let Ohio come in there and gain any traction and to gain some confidence. No, they're going to come in, and the Buckeyes are going to quickly, once again, set the tone with their physicality, with their speed, with their play calls, with their multiplicity on offense and defense. They're going to set the tone. And the ability for Ohio State to use 4 and even sometimes 5 tight ends in a single half of football, there's absolutely no reason why you would think in your right mind that the Buckeyes will score less than 50 and that Ohio will score over 10. I can see via some discussions and the way people are describing their score predictions why people might agree and say, oh, they're going to score 14 points. And to me, that's a slap in the face of Ohio State's defense. If you think that Ohio is going to come in and score 14 points when the Buckeyes really, Grambling should have scored 3 points, but they didn't. They missed a field goal. They shut our team out last week and only allowed Texas to score 7. Why would you think Ohio is going to score more? Well, they have a good quarterback. They do. He's a little versatile. He is. He's going to utilize his leg a little bit. He is. What's also going to happen? There are going to be players on the defensive front specifically that are going to step up in a big way because they have been challenged all week to raise their level of play. Remember, the standard is a standard, and it doesn't change. You play up to your standard regardless of the opponent. And while these players are in practice, they're getting pushed and challenged to make sure what has happened the previous 2 weeks continues, but you're tearing it up a little bit. Also, Ohio State's trying to ramp things up because you're going into an off week, and you don't want to go into an off week with a game where you only win by 38-10 against Ohio. You don't want to go into the off week like that. No, you want to go in there high, beating your chest, realizing we just brought the wood to this team, and we are gaining confidence. The off week is great. It's coming at a decent time. I'm not really a fan of playing 3 games and then going to the off week, but that's where the calendar works this year. And I think for the Buckeyes, they have everything they need to shut down the Ohio Bobcats. I know there might be some Bobcat alumni or Bobcat students watching this show right now or listening to it. I appreciate you for tapping in. But also, remember, they're coming to the shoe, Ohio Stadium, to play the world-famous Ohio State Buckeyes, as Gus Johnson calls them. When a team comes to Ohio State, they get the full Ohio State treatment. Texas got it. Grambling got it. Ohio is about to get it. They're going to get the full Ohio State treatment. Yes, they're going to be confident because of what's happened the past couple of weeks. They might even be borderline cocky because they beat West Virginia. They almost beat a Big Ten team in week 1. Neither of those teams are the Ohio State University. So if you're going to come to this game be confident, that's great. If I sound a little cocky myself, no. I am just bold and confident in what my eyeballs have seen and witnessed from this year's team. And I know tomorrow when Ohio comes to town, it's still weird saying Ohio State and Ohio. I'm used to just, as you know, it's Ohio State this, is Ohio State that. It's not Ohio in the pause or an Ohio, then a word after Ohio that is not state. If it feels weird to you as I'm saying it, imagine how I feel as I'm thinking in these thoughts while I'm speaking into a microphone. The Buckeyes win 52-6. This defense is going to be lights out once again. I would not be shocked if they scored another defensive touchdown in back-to-back weeks. Why? Because there are too many dogs in this defense to not take advantage of the mistakes that the Ohio Bobcats will have tomorrow night. Thank you all for tapping Locked On Buckeyes and making this show your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out Locked On College Football, because Spencer McLaughlin is the man to keep you up to date and get you ready for an upcoming busy, wild, and crazy weekend of college football. You can follow Locked On College Football and Locked On Buckeyes right there on the YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow me on any social media platform at jstevens07. Send every email to jstevens317@gmail.com. This has been Locked On Buckeyes right here on a Friday. We'll see you next time.